and Happy New Year! I think that was planned. It went going that way. Give me a moment. There. The confetti that was in there. But literally, guys and girls, Happy New Year! We have reached 2026. Thank you for this continual support throughout all the years I've done this, and I look forward to seeing what 2026 has yet to offer. Do you guys have any resolutions? Please let me know in the comments. In the meantime, time for what you came here for. So let's get started, shall we? Chapter 11. The Bride. If Kreacher could escape a lake full of inferi, Harry was confident that the capture of Mundungus would take a few hours at most, and he prowled the house all morning in a state of high anticipation. However, Kreacher did not return that morning, or even that afternoon. By nightfall, Harry felt discouraged and anxious, and the supper, composed largely of moldy bread, upon which Hermione had tried a variety of unsuccessful transfigurations, did nothing to help. I'm a little concerned for your health there, Harry. I don't think moldy bread's that appetizing. Kreacher did not return the following day, nor the day after that. However, two cloaked men had appeared in the square outside number 12, and they remained there into the night, gazing in the direction of the house that they couldn't see. Death Eaters for sure, said Ron as he, Harry, and Hermione watched from the drawing room windows. Reckon they know we're in here. I don't think so, said Hermione, though she looked frightened. Or they'd have sent Snape after us, wouldn't they? Do you reckon he's been in here and had his tongue tied by Moody's curse? Asked Ron. Yes, said Hermione. Otherwise he'd have been able to tell that lot how to get in, wouldn't he? But they're probably watching to see whether we turn up. They know that Harry owns the house after all. How'd you say? Began Harry. Wizarding laws are exempt by the Ministry, remember? There are no serious theft to the place. The presence of the Death Eaters outside increased the ominous mood inside number 12. They hadn't heard a word from anyone beyond Grimmauld Place since Mr. Weasley's Patronus, and the strain was starting to tell. Restless and irritable, Ron had developed an annoying habit of playing with the Deluminator in his pocket. This particularly infuriated Hermione, who was whiling away the wait for Kreacher by studying the Tales of Beetle in the bar, and didn't appreciate the way the lights kept flashing on and off. Yeah, I speak from experience when I don't like that either. Will you stop it? She cried on the third evening of Kreacher's absence as all light was sucked from the drawing room yet again. Sorry, said Ron, clicking the Deluminator and restoring the lights. I don't know I'm doing it. Well, could you find something useful to occupy yourself? Not like reading kids' stories. The Potter left me this book, Ron, and he left me the Deluminator. Maybe I'm supposed to use it. Unable to stand the bickering. Yeah, I don't blame you, Harry. Harry slipped out of the room unnoticed by either of them. Again, I don't blame you, Harry. He headed downstairs toward the kitchen, which he kept visiting because he was sure that was where Kreacher was most likely to reappear. Halfway down the flight of stairs into the hall, however, he heard a tap on the front door. Then the metallic clicks and the grinding of the chain. Every nerve in his body seemed to taut. He pulled out his wand, moved into the shadows beside the decapitated elf heads, and waited. The door opened. He saw a glimpse into the lamplit square outside, and a cloaked figure edged into the hall and closed the door behind it. The intruder took a step forward, and Moody's voice asked, "Severus Snape?" Then the dust figure rose from the end of the hall and rushed him, raising its dead hand. "It was not I who killed you, Albus." Well, that's a little weird to greet with that, to say Albus when Moody's first name is Alistair. I'm gonna correct it because it's bugging me. "It was not I who killed you, Alistair," said a quiet voice. The jinx broke. The dust fig. Oh. Okay, that makes sense now. Never mind. Never mind, it makes sense. Look, this is Deathly Hallows, my second read. It's the new year. Confetti is still raining, like, the explosion is still ringing in my ears. Like, not literally, but it's like, there are lots of confetti being blown at my house prior to this recording. So it's just like, I'm clouded with confetti. Cut me a little bit of slack. Okay, I'm gonna restart all that now. Now that it makes sense. But yeah, I'm just like, I had to think a moment. But yeah, my mind is a little cloudy from the confetti. So if I misinterpret something or forget a key clue, it's like, it's New Year's, cut me some slack. Please. Thank you. "It was not I who killed you, Albus," said a quiet voice. The jinx broke. The dust figure exploded again, and it was impossible to make out the newcomer through the dense gray cloud it left behind. Harry pointed his wand into the middle of it. "Don't move!" He had forgotten the portrait of Mrs. Black. At the sound of his yell, which I did not attempt, the curtains hiding her flew open and she began to scream. No screams, but enunciate. "Not has felt dishonor in my house!" Ron and Hermione came crashing down the stairs behind Harry, wands pointing like his at the unknown man now standing with his arms raised in the hall below. "Hold your fire, it's me, bring this." "Oh, thank goodness," said Hermione weakly, pointing her wand at Mrs. Black instead. With a bang, well, now I wish I kind of waited, but here's a sound effect bang courtesy of me. Bang! And the curtain swished shut again and silence fell. Ron too lowered his wand, but Harry didn't. "Show yourself," he called back. Lupin moved forward into the lamplight, hands still held high in a gesture of surrender. "I'm Remus John Lupin, werewolf, sometimes known as Moony, one of the four creators of the Marauders Map, married to Nymphadora, usually known as Tonks, and I taught you how to produce a Patronus, Harry, which takes the form of a stack." "Oh, all right," said Harry, lowering his wand. "But I had to check, didn't I?" "Speaking as your former defense against the dark arts teacher, I quite agree that you had to check. Hermione, you shouldn't be so quick to lower your defenses." Yeah, this is why I like to double check everything and be thorough. Never know when it will save your life. They ran the stairs toward him. Wrapped in a thick black traveling cloak, he looked exhausted, but pleased to see them. No sign of Severus, then? He asked. No, said Harry. What's going on? Is everyone okay? Yes, said Lupin, but we're all being watched. There are a couple of Death Eaters in the square outside. We know. I tapped very precisely onto the top step outside the front door to be sure that they wouldn't see me. They can't know you're in here. I'm sure they'd have more people out there. They're talking out everywhere that's got any connection with you, Harry. Let's go downstairs. There's a lot to tell you, and I want to know what happened after he left the burrow. They descended into the kitchen, where Hermione pointed her wand at the grate. The fire sprang up instantly, and gave the illusion of coziness to the stark stone walls, and glistened off the long wooden table. Lupin pulled a few butterbeers from beneath his traveling cloak, and they sat down. I'd have been here 3 days ago, but I needed to shake off the Death Eater telling me, said Lupin. So you came straight here after the wedding? No, said Harry. Only after we ran into a couple of Death Eaters in a cafe on Tottenham Court Road. Lupin swapped most of his butterbeer down his front. What? They explained what happened. When they finished, Lupin looked aghast. But how did they find you so quickly? It's impossible to track anyone who operates unless you grab hold of them as they disappear. And it doesn't seem likely they were just strolling down Tottenham Court Road at the time, does it? Said Harry. We've wondered, said Hermione tentatively, whether Harry could still have the trace on him. Impossible, said Lupin. Ron looked smug, and Harry felt hugely relieved. Apart from anything else, they'd know for sure Harry was still here if he still had the trace on him, wouldn't they? But I can't see how they would have tracked you to Tottenham Court Road. That's worrying. Really worrying. He looked disturbed, but as far as Harry was concerned, that question could wait. Tell us what happened after we left. I haven't heard a thing since Ron's dad told us the family were safe. Or was safe. Well, Kingsley saved us, said Lupin. Thanks to his warning, most of the wedding guests were able to disapparate before they arrived. Were they Death Eaters or Ministry people? Interjected Hermione. A mixture, but to all intents and purposes they're the same thing now, said Lupin. There were about a dozen of them. But they didn't know we were there, Harry. Arthur heard a rumor that they tried to torture your whereabouts out to screen Joe before they killed him. If it's true, he didn't give you away. Harry looked at Ron and Hermione. Their expressions reflected the mingled shock and gratitude he felt. He never liked Scrimgeour much, but if what Lupin said was true, the man's final act had been to try and protect Harry. The Death Eaters searched the burrow from top to bottom, Lupin went on. They found the ghoul, but didn't want to get too close. And then they interrogated those of us who remained for hours. They're trying to get information on you, Harry. But of course nobody apart from the Warden knew that you had been there. At the same time that they were smashing up the wedding, more Death Eaters were forcing their way into every Order-connected house in the country. No deaths, he added quickly, forestalling the question, but they were rough. They burned down Daedalus Stickle's house, but as you know, he wasn't there. And they used the Cruciatus curse on Tonks' family. Aww, hugs for Tonks and her family. Especially given what they later go through. Again, trying to find out where you went after you visited them. They're alright. Shaken obviously, but otherwise okay. The Death Eaters got through all those protective charms. Harry asked, remembering how effective those had been on the night he crashed into Tom's parents' garden. What you've got to realize, Harry, is that the Death Eaters have got the full might of the Ministry on their side now, said Lupin. They've got the power to perform brutal spells without fear of identification or arrest. They managed to penetrate every defensive spell we cast against them. And once inside, they were completely open about why they'd come. And are they bothering to give an excuse for torturing Harry's whereabouts on people? Asked Hermione, an edge to her voice. Oh, said Lupin. He hesitated, then pulled out a folded copy of the Daily Prophet. Here, he said, pushing it across the table to Harry. We'll know sooner or later anyway. That's the pretext for going after you. Harry smoothed out the paper. A huge photograph of his own face filled the front page. He read the headline over it. Wanted for questioning about the death of Albus Dumbledore. Ron and Hermione gave roars of outrage, but Harry said nothing. He pushed the paper away. He didn't want to read any more. He knew what it would say. Nobody but those who had been on the top of the tower when Dumbledore died knew who really killed him. And as Reader Skeeter had already told the Wizarding World, Harry had been seen running from the place moments after Dumbledore had fallen. I'm sorry, Harry, Lupin said. So the Death Eaters have taken over the Daily Prophet too? Asked Hermione furiously. Lupin nodded. But surely people realize what's going on. The coup has been smooth and virtually silent, said Lupin. Look who's cameoing for the new year. Hi, baby. She's wishing you guys a happy new year, too. Yeah. She's so precious. Anyway, on to reading. The official version of Scrimgeour's murder said he resigned. He has been replaced by Pius Thicknesse, who is under the Imperious Curse. Why didn't Voldemort declare himself Minister of Magic? Asked Ron. Lupin laughed. He doesn't need to, Ron. Effectively, he is the Minister. But why should he sit behind a desk at the Ministry? His puppet, Thicknesse, is taking care of everyday business. Even Voldemort agreed to extend his power beyond the Ministry. Naturally, many people have deduced what has happened. There have been such dramatic change in Ministry policy in the last few days, and many are whispering that Voldemort must be behind it. However, that is the point. They whisper. They daren't confide in each other, not knowing whom to trust. They are scared to speak out, in case their suspicions are true and their families are targeted. Yes, Voldemort is playing a very clever game. Declaring himself might have provoked open rebellion. Remaining masked has created confusion, uncertainty, and fear. And this dramatic change in Ministry policy, said Harry, involves wanting the Wizarding World against me instead of Voldemort. That's certainly part of it, said Lupin, and it is a masterstroke. Now that Dumbledore is dead, you, the boy who lives, are sure to be the symbol and rallying point for any resistance to Voldemort. But by suggesting that you had a hand in the old hero's death, Voldemort has not only set a price upon your head, but sown doubt and fear amongst many who would have defended you. Meanwhile, the Ministry has started moving against Muggleborns. Lupin pointed at the Daily Prophet. Look at page 2. Hermione turned the pages with much the same expression of distaste she had worn when handling Secrets of the Darkest Art. Muggle-born register, she read aloud. The Ministry of Magic is undertaking a survey of so-called Muggle-borns to better understand how they came to possess magical secrets. Recent research undertaken by the Department of Mysteries reveals that magic can only be passed from person to person when wizards reproduce. Where no proven wizarding ancestry exists, therefore, the so-called Muggle-born is likely to have obtained magical power by theft or force. I would like to wonder about this myself, and the theory I have, you're welcome to agree or disagree, figure out your own stance on it, but I have a theory on it that basically goes, there was a member in the family that was wizarding, but over the years, offspring became squibs and eventual muggles, and therefore it skipped so many generations until it resurfaced. I think that makes the most sense. But again, you're welcome to agree or disagree, but this is just the theory I have. Anyway. The Ministry is determined to root out such usurpers of magical power, and to this end issued an invitation to every so-called Muggle-born to present themselves for interview by the newly appointed Muggle-born Registration Commission. People won't let this happen, said Ron. It is happening, Ron, said Lupin. Muggle-borns are being rounded up as we speak. But how are they supposed to have stolen magic? Said Ron. It's mental. If you could steal magic, there wouldn't be any squibs, would there? I know, said Lupin. Nevertheless, unless you can prove that you have at least one close wizarding relative, you are now deemed to have obtained your magical power illegally and must suffer the punishment. Ron glanced at Hermione, then said, So what if purebloods and half-bloods swear a Muggle-born's part of their family? I'll tell everyone Hermione's my cousin. Oh, Ron, your noble heart is so endearing. Ron covered Ron's hand with hers and squeezed it. Thank you, Ron, but I couldn't let you. You won't have a choice, said Ron fiercely, gripping her hand back. I'll teach you my family tree so you can answer questions on it. I honestly think that'd be a good way for them to bond. It would just be so much fun. And in turn, I think Hermione would like to tell him about hers once things are smoothed out and calmer. But yeah, that sounds like a good bonding activity. Hermione gave a shaky laugh. Ron, as we're on the run with Harry Potter, the most wanted person in the country, I don't think it matters. If I was going back to school, it would be different. What's fun more playing for Hogwarts? She asked Lupin. Attendance is now compulsory for every young witch and wizard, he replied. It was announced yesterday. It's a change because it was never obligatory before. Of course, nearly every witch and wizard in Britain has been educated at Hogwarts, but if their parents had the right to teach them at home or send them abroad if they preferred, this way, Wilmore will have the whole wizarding population under his eye from a young age. And it's also another way of weeding out Muggle-borns, because students must be given blood status, meaning they have proven to the Ministry that they are of wizard descent before they are allowed to attend. Harry felt sickened and angry. At this moment, excited 11-year-olds would be poring over stacks of newly purchased spell books, or that they would never see Hogwarts, perhaps never see their families again either. It's... he muttered, struggling to find words that did justice to the horror of his thoughts. But Lupin said quietly, I know. Then he hesitated. Let's see, how can I describe it? Well, you could use indescribable, but I think I'm going to use purgatory. That seems like a good way to describe it. Moving on. I'll understand if you can't confirm this, Harry, but the Order is under the impression that Dumbledore left you a mission. He did, Harry replied. Ron and Hermione are in on it, and they're coming with me. Can you confide in me what the mission is? Harry looked into the prematurely lined face, framed in thick but graying hair, and wished that he could return a different answer. Aww. Hugs. I can't, Remus. I'm sorry. If Dumbledore didn't tell you, I don't think I can. I thought you'd say that, said Lupin, looking disappointed. But I might still be of some use to you. You know what I am, and what I can do. I could come with you to provide protection. There would be no need to tell me exactly what you were up to. Harry hesitated. It was a very tempting offer, though how they would be able to keep their mission secret from Lupin if he were with them all the time, he couldn't imagine. Hermione, however, looked puzzled. But what about Tonks? She asked. What about her? Said Lupin. Well, said Hermione, frowning, I'm married. How does she feel about you going away with us? Tonks will be perfectly safe, said Lupin. She'll be at her parents' house. There was something strange in Lupin's tone. It was almost cold. There was also something odd in the idea of Tonks remaining hidden at her parents' house. She was, after all, a member of the Order, and as far as Harry knew, was likely to want to be in the thick of the action. Well, we know, advanced Potterheads know why, but newcomers, you're gonna have to wait. Oh, luckily the wait will be over soon. Remus, said Hermione tentatively, is everything right? You know, between you and it, everything is fine, thank you, said Lupin pointedly. Hermione turned pink. There was another pause. An awkward and embarrassed one. Then Lupin said with an air of forcing himself to admit something unpleasant, Thomas is going to have a baby. Oh, how wonderful! Squealed Hermione. Excellent, said Ron enthusiastically. Congratulations, said Harry. Lupin gave an artificial smile that was more like a grimace, then said, So, do you accept my offer? We'll take it on the floor. I can't believe that Dumbledore would have disapproved. After all, he appointed me to Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher. And I must tell you that I believe we are facing magic many of us have never encountered or imagined. Ron and Hermione both looked at Harry. Just to be clear, he said, you want to leave Tonks at her parents' house and come away with us? She'll be perfectly safe there. They'll look after her, said Lupin. He spoke with a final and warning on indifference. Harry, I'm sure James would have wanted me to stick with you. Well, said Harry slowly, I'm not. I'm pretty sure my father would have wanted to know why you weren't sticking with your own kid, actually. A good point, Harry. A very good point. And honestly, I'm going to address commentary I addressed before. But parents need to treat their kids like humans, not droids. Lupin's face drained of power. The temperature in the kitchen might have dropped 10 degrees. Ron stared around the room as though he had been bidden to memorize it, while Hermione's eyes wiggled backward and roared from Harry to Lupin. Well, I don't know about actual humans, but my cat's with me, so backward from Lily to the book to Lily. You don't understand, said Lupin at last. Explain then, said Harry. Lupin swallowed. I made a grave mistake in marrying Thomas. I did it against my better judgment, and I have regretted it very much ever since. I see, said Harry. So you're just going to dump her along with the kid and run off with us? Lupin sprang to his feet. His chair toppled over backward, and he glared at them so fiercely that Harry saw for the first time ever the shadow of the wolf upon his human face. Don't you understand what I've done to my wife and my unborn child? I never should have married her and made her an outcast. Lupin kicked aside the chair he had overturned. You've only ever seen me amongst the Order, or under Dumbledore's protection at Hogwarts. You don't know how much the Wizarding World sees creatures like me. When they know of my affliction, they can barely talk to me. Don't you see what I've done? Even her own family is disgusted by her marriage. The parents want their only daughter to marry a werewolf. And the child... Lupin actually seized handfuls of his own hair. He looked quite deranged. My kind don't usually breed. It'll be like me. I'm convinced of it. How can I forgive myself when I knowingly risk passing on my own condition to an innocent child? And if by some miracle it's not like me, then it'll be better off 100 times so, without a father of whom it must always be ashamed. Oh, Lupin. Your fears and feelings are valid, but at the same time they're controlling you. Please think rationally. I know it's hard, but take a breath. Calm down and think rationally. Remus, whispered Hermione, tears in her eyes. Don't say that! How could any child be ashamed of you? Oh, I don't know, Hermione, said Harry. I'd be pretty ashamed of him. Although, I don't think it's for the reason that it being the way it's, although I don't think it's because of, being like my father in this scenario, but more so the fact my father was absent, and that would be pretty ashamed. I mean, my biological, the idiot who gave me half his chromosomes wasn't that great to me, but it's like, I still aspire to be a better person because of it. But it I know it's different from, like, this scenario, but it's like, honestly, you would want to be there with them regardless. So, I think Harry's shame is more, like, geared toward the idea of a father being absent rather than the child being like the father. I hope that explains things a little better. If not, I apologize, but it's like, that's the only explanation I can see fit for why Harry feels this way. I try to give psychological insight sometimes. This is one of those moments. But anyway, Harry didn't know where his rage was coming from, but it had propelled him to his feet too. Well, you already know how I feel on why Harry probably being like this, so I'll spare the repetition. Lupin looked as though Harry had hit him. If the new regime thinks Muggleborns are bad, said Harry, what will they do to a half-werewolf whose father's in the Order? My father died trying to protect my mother and I. And you reckon he'd tell you to abandon your kid and to go on an adventure with us? How dare you, said Lupin. This is not about a desire for danger or personal joy. How dare you suggest that? I think you're feeling a bit of a daredevil, said Harry. You fancy stepping into Sirius's shoes? Harry, no! Hermione begged him, but he continued to glare into Lupin's livid face. I never have believed this, said Harry. The man who taught me to fight Dementors. A coward. Lupin drew his wand so fast that Harry had barely reached for his own. There was a wild bang, and he felt himself flying backward as if punched. As he slammed into the kitchen wall and slid to the floor, he glimpsed the tail of Lupin's cloak disappearing around the door. Remus! Remus, come back! Hermione cried, but Lupin didn't respond. A moment later, they heard the front door slam. Okay, that was right at the door. There we go. Harry! Wailed Hermione. How could you? It was easy, said Harry. He stood up. He could feel a lump swelling where his head had hit the wall. He was still so full of anger he was shaking. Don't look at me like that, he snapped at Hermione. Don't you start on her, snarled Ron. No, we mustn't fight, said Hermione, wanding herself between them. You should have said that stuff to Lupin, Ron told Harry. You had to call me to him, said Harry. Broken images were racing each other through his mind. Sirius falling through the veil, Dumbledore suspended, broken in midair, a flash of green light, and his mother's voice begging for mercy. Parents, said Harry, shouldn't leave their kids unless they've got to. Wow, Harry. I'm gonna need some moments to process that. Whew, that's deep. That's deep. That's deep. Okay, yeah. Definitely gonna need some emotional recovery from that. Anyway. Harry, said Hermione, stretching out a consoling hand. But he shrugged it off and walked away, his eyes on the fire that Hermione had conjured. He once spoken to Lupin out of that fireplace, seeking reassurance about James, and Lupin had consoled him. Now Lupin's tortured white face seemed to swim in the air before him. He felt a sickening surge of remorse. Neither Ron nor Hermione spoke, but Harry felt that they were looking at each other behind his back, communicating silently. He turned around and caught them turning hurriedly away from each other. I know I shouldn't have called him a coward. No, you shouldn't, said Ron at once. But he's acting like one. All the same, said Hermione. I will, said Harry. But if it makes him go back to Tonks, it'll be worth it, won't it? Yes, Harry, it'll be definitely worth it. Your anger was just as justified. Wow, quite justified, akin to Lupin's fears and feelings. All of those emotions are valid. It is not easy to say just as justifiable. Like, I would have to enunciate it. Just as justifiable. There's a new tongue twister for the new year. Anyway. He couldn't keep the plea out of his voice. Hermione looked sympathetic, Ron uncertain. Harry looked down at his feet, thinking of his father. Would James have backed Harry in what he said about, or in what he said to Lupin? Probably. Or would he have been angry at how his son treated his old friend? I think he would have been angry at first, but then realized eventually Harry's right. So it's like, I would imagine that going on. But again, what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments, please. The silent kitchen seemed to hum with the shock of the recent scene, and with Ron and Hermione's unspoken reproaches. The Daily Prophet Lupin had brought was still lying on the table, Harry's own face staring up at the ceiling from the front page. He walked over to it and sat down, opened the paper at random, and pretended to read. Yeah, pretending to read doesn't go well for me because I'm just like I then get invested and I would like, ooh, this is actually a good book, or don't know if I'm into this. Like it varies, but it's like if I pretend to read, it's like I'm worried I'm gonna actually start reading, and then it'll be like, okay, now I want to know what happens, or what I think about this. But it's like, it's very confusing because normally I get invested, and it's like, now I want to know this whole story behind this. But anyway. He couldn't take in the words. His mind was still too full of the encounter with Lupin. He was sure that Ron and Hermione had resumed their silent communications on the other side of the prophet. He turned a page loudly. There. I tried to not go so loud I accidentally tear it, so I think I did a good job. And Dumbledore's name leapt out at him. It was a moment or two before he took in the meaning of the photograph, which showed a family group. Beneath the photograph were the words, "The Dumbledore family left to right. Albus, Percival, holding newborn Ariana, Kendra, and Aberforth." His attention caught. Harry examined the picture more carefully. Dumbledore's father, Percival, was a good-looking man with eyes that seemed to twinkle even in this faded old photograph. The baby Ariana was a little lumper than a loaf of bread and no more distinctive looking. The mother, Kendra, had jet black hair pulled into a high bun. Her face had a carved quality about it. Harry thought of photos of Native Americans he'd seen as he studied her dark eyes, high cheekbones, and straight nose, formally composed above a high-necked silk gown. Albus and Aberforth wore matching lacy-colored jackets and had identical shoulder-length hairstyles. Albus looked several years older, but otherwise the two boys looked very alike, for this was before Albus's nose had been broken and before he started wearing glasses. The family looked quite happy and normal, smiling serenely up out of the newspaper. Baby Ariana's arm waved vaguely out of her shawl. Harry looked above the picture and saw the headline, "Exclusive extract from the upcoming biography of Albus Dumbledore by Rita Skeeter." Oh, not her! She is a bane of the wizarding existence. Or maybe just mine. Either way, I find her a rather detestable character. Thinking that it could hardly make him feel any worse than he already did, Harry began to read. How did haughty Kendra Dumbledore could not bear to remain in moved on the hold after her husband Percival's well-publicized arrest and imprisonment in Azkaban. She therefore decided to uproot the family and relocate to Godric's Hollow, the village that was later became famous as the scene of Harry Potter's strange escape from Unalhood. He did not escape. He just... I would really like to jump in books and give Rita Skeeter a taste of her own medicine. Just so she can see what it's like. But alas, until such a time where we can visit the worlds from our books via teleportation, which would be cool. You'll have to deal with my venting of grievances. Like more on the world, Godric's Hollow was home to a number of wizarding families. But as Kendra knew none of them, she would be spared the curiosity about her husband's crime she had faced in her former village. By repeatedly rebuffing the friendly advances of her wizarding neighbors, she soon ensured that her family was left well known. Slammed the door in my face when I went around to welcome her with a batch of homemade cauldron cakes, says without a back shot. Those sound good. I wonder if there's a recipe. I'll look when we're done here and get back to you next week. The first year there I only ever saw 2 boys. One had known that was the daughter had been picking plantains by moonlight the winter after they moved in, and saw Kendra leading Ariana out into the back garden. Walked her round the lawn once, keeping a firm grip on her, then took her back inside. Didn't know what to make of it. It seems like Kendra thought the move to Godric's Hollow was a perfect opportunity to hide Ariana once and for all, something she had probably been planning for years. The timing was significant. Ariana was barely 7 years old when she vanished from sight, and 7 is the age by which most experts agree that magic will have revealed itself, if present. Nobody now alive remembers Ariana ever demonstrating even the slightest sign of magical ability. It seems clear, therefore, that Kendra made a decision to hide her daughter's existence, rather than suffer the shame of admitting she had produced a squib. Moving away from the friends and neighbors who knew Ariana would, of course, make imprisoning her all the easier. The tiny number of people who henceforth knew of Ariana's existence could be counted upon to keep the secret, including her 2 brothers, who deflected awkward questions with the answer the mother had taught them. My sister is too rare for school. Next week, Albus Dumbledore at Hogwarts. The prizes and the pretense. Harry had been wrong. What he had read indeed made him feel worse. He looked back at the photograph of the apparently happy family. Was it true? How could he find out? He wanted to go to Godric's Hollow. Even if Bathilda was in no fit state to talk to him, he wanted to visit the place where he and Dumbledore both lost loved ones. He was in the process of lowering the newspaper to ask Ron and Hermione's opinions, when a deafening crack— I know that's a snap, but closest sign— echoed around the kitchen. For the first time in 3 days, Harry had forgotten all about Kreacher. His immediate thought was that Lupin had burst back into the room, and for a split second he didn't take in the mass of straggling limbs that had appeared out of thin air right beside his chair. He hurried to his feet as Kreacher disentangled himself and, bowing low to Harry, croaked, "Kreacher has returned with the thief Mundungus Fletcher, master." Mundungus was scrambled up and pulled out his wand. Hermione, however, was too quick for him. "Expelliarmus!" I just had to add the snap for extra effect. Mundungus's wand soared into the air, and Hermione caught it. Wide-eyed, Mundungus dived for the stairs. Ron rugby tackled him. Rugby tackled. Alright, good job, Ron. And Mundungus hit the stone floor with a muffled crunch. Ron! He bellowed, writhing in his attempts to free himself from Ron's grip. Good luck. Ron is taller than you. What I've done! So then a blade and I'll tell him what I've played at. What I've done, let me go, let me go. You're not in much of a position to make threats, said Harry. He threw aside the newspaper, crossed the kitchen in a few strides, and dropped to his knees beside Mundungus, who stopped struggling and looked terrified. Ron got up, panting, and watched as Harry pointed his wand deliberately at Mundungus's nose. Mundungus stank of stale sweat and tobacco smoke. Ugh, no thank you. That is not a combination that smells like a lavender candle. His hair was matted and his robe stained. Kreacher apologized for the delay in bringing the thief, master, croaked the elf. Fletcher knows how to avoid capture, has many hidey holes and accomplices. Nevertheless, Kreacher cornered the thief in the end. You've done really well, Kreacher, said Harry, and the elf bowed low. Right. We've got a few questions for you, Harry told Mundungus, who shouted at once. Well, I don't know about shouted, but I am going to enunciate. I panicked, okay? I never wanted to come alone, no offense, mate, but I never volunteered to die for it, and I was believing, who'd come flying at me. Anyone would have got out of there. I said all along I didn't want to do it. For your information, none of the rest of us disapparated, said Hermione. Well, you're a bunch of believing in errors, then, aren't you? But I never pretended I was getting messed up. I'm not interested in why you ran out on Mad-Eye, said Harry, moving his wand a little closer to Mundungus's baggy, bloodshot eyes. I already knew you were an unreliable pipscum. Oh, well, then why have I been done by ourselves? It was just about the goblets again. I ain't got none of them left. Well, you could have them. It's not about the goblets either, although you're getting warmer, said Harry. Shut up and listen. It felt wonderful to have something to do. Someone of whom he could demand some small portion of truth. But Harry's wand was now so close to the bridge of Mundungus's nose that Mundungus had gone cross-eyed trying to keep it in view. When you think of this house of anything valuable, Harry began, but Mundungus interrupted him again. Tears never got about any of the junk. There was the sound of pattering feet, the blaze of shining copper, an echoing clang, and a shriek of agony. Well, I don't know about shriek, but just bear with me. Kreacher had taken a run at Mundungus and hit him over the head with a saucepan. I hope it wasn't hot. But at the same time, Kreacher, how very Rapunzel of you. How very Rapunzel of you. And if none of you are familiar with Disney's Tangled, sincerely go, please watch it. It is a good Disney movie. Touching in some moments, funny in some moments, but all around a good Disney movie. It's one of my favorites. I think if I had a top 15, it would be on there somewhere. That's how good it is. Maybe a top 20 if I'm generous. But anyway, you're not here for Disney, you're here for Potter. Go them all, these should be locked up, screamed Mundungus. Cowering as Kreacher raised the heavy bottomed hand again. I didn't scream, I just enunciated. Kreacher, no! Shouted Harry. Again, no shout, just enunciate. Kreacher's thin arms trembled with the weight of the pan still held aloft. Perhaps just one more, Master Harry, for luck. Ron laughed. For luck. Oh, Kreacher, this is why we love you. This is why we love you. We name him conscious, Kreacher, but if he needs persuading, you can do the honors, said Harry. Thank you very much, master, said Kreacher with a bow, and he retreated a short distance, his great pale eyes still fixed upon Mundungus' clothing. When you stripped of this house of all the valuables you could find, Harry began again. You took a bunch of stuff from the kitchen cupboard. There was a locket there. Harry's mouth was suddenly dry. He could sense Ron and Hermione's tension and excitement, too. What did you do with it? Why? Asked Mundungus. Is it valuable? You've still got it! Cried Hermione. No, he hasn't, said Ron shrewdly. He's wondering whether he should have asked for more money for it. More, said Mundungus. That would have been difficult. I gave it away, didn't I? No choice. What do you mean? I was sitting in Diagon Alley and he comes up to me and asks if I've got a license for trading magical artifacts. But I didn't know. She was going to find me, but she took a fancy to the locket and told me she'd take it. And let me off that time. And to find myself lucky. Who was this woman? Asked Harry. I don't know, some minister I have. Mundungus considered a moment, about wrinkled. Little woman, low on top of her head. Harry, he frowned, then added, looked like a toad. Harry dropped his wand. It hit Mundungus on the nose and shot red sparks into his eyebrows, which ignited. Oh, God. I don't mean to laugh because it's funny, but it's just... Oh, no. Why do we have to meet her again so... And you should remember who this means, considering Order of the Phoenix. But anyway. Open Mackenzie! Screamed Hermione. Well, I didn't scream, just enunciate. And a jet of water streamed from her wand, engulfing the sputtering and choking Mundungus. Okay. There's my sound effects for you. Harry looked up and saw his own shock reflected in Ron and Hermione's faces. The scars on the back of his right hand seemed to be tingling again. And that is the end of this chapter. Once again, Happy New Year. And join me next week for Chapter 12. Magic is Might. Until then, bye!